Hey everybody, this is Andre here with the Kevin Breeze channel, and in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the LG K31 Rebel. Let's get started. So this phone has a 5.7-inch LCD display with a resolution of 720p, a PPI of 295, and an aspect ratio of 19:9. We got a water drop notch here for the front-facing camera, and this camera is 5 megapixels. Right now, I do have the brightness at 100%, and I would say for only being a 720p display, it does look pretty good. Despite the bottom bezel here, the rest of the phone has pretty thin bezels, and the display, even though it's only a 5.7-inch display, does look really nice. It's definitely not going to be too small to the point where it's a disadvantage, but at the same time, this phone isn't very big, so it's going to be comfortable to hold in your hand and carry in your pocket. The materials are not bad either. We got a pretty hard, slightly glossy material. It's kind of halfway in between matte and glossy, and it really doesn't pick up very many fingerprints, as you can see here. And overall, despite being the entry-level phone it is, it really doesn't feel like a cheap phone. The materials are really good quality, and I am pretty impressed with the design. The only thing I don't particularly care for is the water drop notch design on the front-facing camera. I think the hole punch would have looked a lot better. For storage, this phone has 32 gigabytes of internal storage with microSD card expansion, which is better than a lot of the phones in this price range that only have 16. If you're an average user, you're probably going to be completely fine with 32 gigabytes. As long as you're just a little mindful of how much stuff you're putting on the phone, you shouldn't have any problems. But if you're a power user, you might want to look into a phone that has 64 gigabytes of internal storage instead of 32. Just because apps are getting larger and larger these days, as well as the system. And really all it takes is a bunch of larger apps and a lot of photos and videos, and then suddenly you're out of space, and you don't want that to happen. Again, if you're an average user, you're gonna be fine, but if you do have a ton of games and that sort of thing, or shoot lots of videos, then you might wanna look into a device that has a little bit more space. Now this phone has no wireless charging, and for security, it doesn't have a fingerprint scanner or face unlock, which is pretty unfortunate because now you're stuck with either a pattern, a PIN, or a password, which is kind of old-fashioned. I'm not a fan of it at all. In fact, I don't even have any security on this phone. It's just swipe and it unlocks, just for convenience, honestly. But if you're okay with a PIN or a password or a pattern, then it shouldn't be a problem. Now taking a look at the rear camera setup, we have dual cameras here with a 13 megapixel rear camera and a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera. I'm really glad that this phone has an ultra wide camera. That's one of my favorite camera features. And it also has portrait mode in the rear and front cameras. So although the camera setup isn't really fancy and full of features, it is decent if you want to take a couple of pictures here and there, maybe post something on social media and that sort of thing. Now this phone is also capable of shooting videos in qualities up to 1080p. I'm going to turn it over to Kevin to show you some photo and video samples from this phone.
The camera quality experience with the LG K31 Rebel has been kind of a hit or miss experience, but considering how affordable this phone is, that is to be expected. Now the good news though is that the cameras do work, and they do get the job done if you are expecting just the bare minimum. Now I will let the photo and video quality speak for itself, but I do want to clarify that some of the photos that you're seeing were taken when I first got the phone, and then other photos were taken several months later. But I definitely do like that we are getting that ultra wide angle camera, and portrait mode does work well. Now as far as taking images in low light situations, you're gonna get pretty mediocre results, but if you're in decent to good daylight or just a generally well lit situation, then the photos will look good enough that they are usable. But if you are moving from a higher end smartphone to this device, then you probably will notice a downgrade in quality.
What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, coming at you with a test video with the LG K31 Rebel. So let me know what you think of the video quality and also the audio quality from the video itself. I'm really curious to know what you think, but here it is. And here is a 1080p test video using the rear camera with the LG K31 Rebel. This is with the main camera. We do get autofocus in video mode, and it's pretty quick. It is during the middle of the day right now, so there is going to be quite a bit of contrast when it comes to sunlight. And here's a test video using the ultra wide angle camera with the LG K31 Rebel. So with the ultra wide camera, you can definitely fit quite a bit more content into the frame.
So internally, the LG K31 Rebel is getting 2 GB of RAM with the MediaTek Helio P22 processor. We ran a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on this phone and it came back with a single core score of 135 and a multi-core score of 485, so it's definitely not the fastest phone out there. If you're using the phone for basic activities like sending text messages, making calls, browsing the web, and maybe some light social media use, you should be completely fine. That's really what this phone is built for, those more light activities that aren't too intense. But if you're trying to do something that's more demanding, like playing games, streaming lots of videos, editing photos and videos, and that sort of thing, then you might run into some trouble. Even on social media apps like Instagram and TikTok and that sort of thing, that have more video content and stuff with more complicated graphics, this phone might struggle a little bit. And since it's only getting 2 GB of RAM, multitasking, depending on what you're doing, might be a little bit of an issue too. For the battery, this phone has a 3000 mAh battery that has about 11 hours of talk time. It's not bad, but if you're looking for a phone with a super big battery that has a ton of life and lots of longevity, then you might be a little disappointed. But at the same time, the iPhone 12 has a 2815 mAh battery, so it can always get worse. Now that we've gone over some of the specs of the phone, let's take a closer look at the hardware. On the left side here, we have our volume up button, volume down button, Google Assistant button, and the slot for the SIM card and microSD card. I'm definitely not a fan of the Google Assistant button, especially on a phone like this because it's so easy to accidentally open it, and then when you do, especially if you're in the middle of something, since this phone doesn't have the greatest processor, it's probably gonna lag a little bit when it's opening and when you're trying to close it, and it's such a hassle. Worst case scenario, it crashes everything you're trying to do, which has happened to me before. So I wish that this phone and pretty much any other phone in existence just didn't have this button. It's so unnecessary. On the right side of the phone, we have our power key. On the top, there's a noise canceling microphone. And on the bottom, we have a 3.5mm headphone jack, the microphone, a micro USB port, and the speaker. On the back, we have the dual camera setup and the flash. There's a TracFone logo right here and an LG logo down at the bottom. Overall, even though this is a very entry-level phone, the materials do feel really solid and sturdy. Now, in conclusion, is the LG K31 Rebel worth buying in 2021? I would say it definitely is, on the condition that you're looking for a phone to use for basic activities like sending text messages, making calls, browsing the web, and maybe some light social media use, and taking some pictures here and there. Otherwise, this phone is probably going to be a disappointment because it doesn't have the strongest processor, it doesn't have the biggest or best display, and it has a relatively small battery. But for the more basic activities, it's really going to be good. It's really simple, easy to use, pretty reliable, and has a nice sturdy design. It's comfortable to carry around, and the ultra-wide camera is nice too. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.